This video is going to be my first look at the Niner RLT9 RDO 5-star build. This is the one that's Shimano GRX 800 with a 2x drivetrain, so 2 chain rings in the front versus a 1x. What I do in my reviews is the first video that I do is a first look where I just show the bike up close, talk about the components, the specs, the build, and then the next video will be after I've ridden the bike for a little bit. And I like to do that just to kind of get the specs and everything out of the way, so I make it kind of a series. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. Now this bike replaces my Niner RLT9 RDO 4-star build that I've had for 2.5, 3 years now. I can't remember exactly how long, but it's been a while. And so what I typically do on my YouTube channel is I'll only ride a bike for about a year and then I sell it. And I like to do that to keep the content fresh, but also to be able to sell a bike when it's in really good condition. Unfortunately, gravel bikes don't get quite the abuse that mountain bikes do, so that bike's actually still in great shape. But this one has something that I've never had in a gravel bike, and that's carbon wheels. And so it should be a little bit lighter, a little bit faster. And so I'm really looking forward to trying the carbon wheels and seeing how they compare to the Stan's Grail alloy wheels that were on my older bike. But let's take a look at the bike up close, and like I said, I'll show you the components and everything on it. I'm going to start with the drivetrain. So this, like I said, it's a 2x system, so the small chain ring is a 32 and the large chain ring is a 47. It comes with an Easton EC90 crankset, which is a carbon crankset. A little bit different than what I had before. I had an alloy crankset. It was Easton as well, so that should add some stiffness to the drivetrain. I'll go ahead and say right now that, and I've said this in my other videos, I prefer having a 2x system on a gravel bike. I like a single front chain ring on mountain bikes. I like it on a cyclocross bike, but on a gravel bike, you know, you're on sometimes flat roads where you're just trying to find that perfect gear. It's harder to find the right gear if you have a 1x system. It's a matter of personal preference. I know that. It does add a little bit of complexity to the drivetrain. You do have a front derailleur, which means a little bit more to go wrong. However, I'll say right now that I raced my previous gravel bike. I still have it. I raced it today in a cyclocross race, and I shifted the front derailleur often, and I had no problems at all, no drop chains or anything. And it was actually the first time I'd ever raced a gravel bike in a cyclocross race, and it did great. Now, one thing that I did, and I'll go ahead and move to the rear derailleur, is I engaged the clutch on the Shimano GRX rear derailleur. I will typically leave the clutch off when riding gravel because it makes the rear shifting just a little bit easier. But today in the cyclocross race, I put it on because I did not want the chain bouncing around, and it worked fine. And like I said, my previous gravel bike shifted great in a pretty muddy, bumpy cyclocross race. All right, so as I mentioned, it does come with a Shimano GRX rear derailleur. It comes with a Shimano Ultegra front derailleur, and of course the shifters and the brake levers up front are Shimano GRX. And for brakes, Shimano GRX. It does have the Shimano center lock rotors, which makes rotors super easy to take off. I love center lock. Both the front and the rear rotors are 160, and that means you do have to have this little adapter, which of course came with the bike. And the rear also has this adapter, and I actually did not see it when I was building up the bike, and I tried to install the brake caliper on the rear without it, and I tried to put the wheel on and realized, oh yeah, it's got to have an adapter. So like I said, 160 rotors in the back, which will provide plenty of stopping power. Looking at the cockpit, starting with the handlebars, it comes with a pair of Easton EC70 handlebars, which are really light. When I got this bike, it was a complete build-up, and the bars were bare, and they are super light. So these are a carbon bar, and they've got a pretty nice flare to them, very similar to the flare I had on my previous Niner RLT9. They were also Easton bars, they were just alloy. So the 5-star build, you know, the thing is, you just get an upgrade in the wheels being carbon, the cranks being carbon, the handlebars being carbon. Comes with just a basic Niner stem, no frill stem that works well, and it has a little cap where you can put a beer cap on the top. It comes with the Niner carbon seat post, the RDO seat post, exact same seat post I had on my previous RLT, and it's great. It has some flex to it, so it smooths out the bumps. The carbon is not overly stiff. They lay up this carbon seat post so that it flexes when you hit a bump. and that really adds to the comfort. Comes with Niner's saddle, which is actually a really comfortable saddle. This is one of the components, probably one of the only ones that I'll change out, just because I am so accustomed to a WTB Silverado saddle that it's the one I prefer on long gravel rides. However, this one's really comfortable. And I've used this saddle on cross-country bikes and no complaints at all. All right, moving on to the wheels and tires. Like I said, this one comes with carbon wheels. First carbon wheel set I've ever used in a gravel bike. Zip 303S wheels. Kind of a deep dish wheel, looks super cool. You know, like I said, it's going to allow for a quicker handling bike, a little bit better acceleration, lighter. My only concern is comfort. So carbon wheels, if they're not laid up right, they can be harsh on bumpy roads. Hopefully Zip has built these so that they have a little bit of flex. Like the Stans carbon wheels that I have on my cross-country bike, I love those wheels. They have flex to them. They're stiff laterally, but vertically when you hit bumps, they are not stiff. And so I'm hoping these are like that, but I'll report back. This one comes with Schwalbe G1 tires. These are a 45C tire. First time I've used 45Cs, I usually use 40, and I'm excited about the comfort that I'm going to get out of these. I've used Schwalbe G1s in the past. They're a fast rolling tire and just a really good gravel tire. This bike, by the way, I'm going to get to the frame in a minute, but this bike fits up to 50C tires if you wanted to do that. Okay, moving on to the frame. So it does come with a press fit bottom bracket. So it's a press fit 30, and I'll talk about the build coming up in a minute. So the frame, by the way, has 26 mounting points on the frame. So, you know, you've got all kind of mounting points for bags, racks, water bottles. So you can mount a top tube bag there, bunch of water bottles, racks, if that's your thing. I don't put racks on gravel bikes. It's just not the way I use a gravel bike right now in my life. But if you wanted to put a front rack, rear rack, like I said, 26 mounting points. By the way, the color is called Avalanche Gray and Slate. I love this color. There's also a red and silver color that you can get for the newer RLT9 RDOs. Always really like the paint job. It is a clear coat, glossy bike, so it is a carbon frame. That's what the RDO stands for. Race day optimized. If a Niner has RDO on the frame or the component, it just means it's their carbon. Cable routing on this bike is excellent. So that's your front derailleur coming in the right side of the down tube, and then it stays internally all the way until it comes out there. You can see that the rear derailleur is internal routing. So the rear derailleur comes in the left side of the down tube, as does the rear brake. So really, really nice cable routing. And like I said, I built up this bike and the cable routing is excellent. You run full housing all the way through the frame, so you're not trying to fish inner wire through the frame, which is a pain. Niner makes it really easy. They have holes underneath the bottom bracket. You just remove this little plate. You run the cables through. You don't have to fish them through. You just push them through and they come out where they're supposed to come out. So like I said, a very nice cable routing that's easy to build up, easy to work on. The fork as well as the frame uses a through axle, not a quick release, which I prefer through axles now. The only time I like a quick release is on maybe like a cross-country race bike, especially in the front, like a Fox quick release. But for a gravel bike, it's preference, but I just like a through axle. As you can see, I have not put pedals on this bike yet, so I'm gonna go weigh it for you. You can see what this one weighs without pedals. So without pedals, this bike comes in at 19.4 pounds. So that's pretty light for a gravel bike. And by the way, I do want to mention that this bike has a port for a dropper post, which of course I don't have on the bike right now. So you would just run that cable down through the down tube and then up to your dropper post. So that's the 5-star build of the Niner RLT9 RDO. Definitely the nicest gravel bike I've ever owned. So I'm excited about putting out some reviews for you on this bike, and those will be coming up. So stay tuned to the channel for those. Any questions or comments that you have so far, drop those below. Thanks for watching.